So welcome everyone. As you know, I'm Rivera's son. I work for Pace y Bene, a 30-year-old nonviolence organization that runs a program called Campaign Nonviolence, which many of you are part of. And we have been running a series of monthly skill building webinars covering a whole range of topics from getting creative to connecting the dots between the issues. Tonight, we're going to talk about media work. We've known for a number of years that many of you have been asking, how do we do better media work? And today we have a special guest presenter, Deborah Matthis, who I got to know back when I feel like I was a baby activist, when I attended the James Lawson Institute in 2014, I think it was, and Deborah presented actually on a number of subjects there, if I remember correctly, but she gave a stellar thing about her specialty, which is media. Deborah has been a White House press correspondent. She has worked for the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict as the director of communications. She's been a nationally syndicated columnist, a television commenter, and an assistant professor at Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism. I could go on and on. She's done a fellowship at Harvard Shorenstein Center. Suffice to say, let me just also mention that she is an author of 6 books, including Yet a Stranger, Why Black Americans Still Don't Feel at Home. Deborah is amazing because she gives from her heart and from her experience to activists like us. And she sits at this incredible intersection of knowledge where she's been on the other side of this conversation. And she's turning that insight out for those of us who would hope to do better media work, and letting us know what media people really need from us and what we really need to do to get our message through across the many platforms of media. So without further ado, Deborah, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so honored you're here, and I am really looking forward to hearing your best pro tips and answering the questions people might have. We will ask you to hold your questions till the end, and we'll make room for them, if that's all right. Oh, Deborah, I can't hear you right now. See if you can. Nope, I still can't hear you. Yeah, just try that little button next to your mute button, the little arrow, and see if you can select the.
Yeah, I've done that. Do you hear me? You hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry for the technical problems. I only do webinars and other Zoom meetings about 4 times a week for the past 2 years. So, beats me why this continues to happen to me. I really have a jinx in my system or something. And I apologize for being kind of in noir because my little handy dandy Zoom light isn't working today either. So yeah, I'm batting 1,000. Anyway, we all know as people in movements, especially, we know how to make a way out of no way. So we are going to proceed and hope that things go well with my PowerPoint presentation. And I know that I'm in loving company. So if I screw up, I know I'm forgiven already, and I love you for that. I'm not very pretentious anyway, which has been to the consternation of some of the places I've been, like in Harvard. I kind of blew their minds a little bit because I grew up middle class, with 2 highly educated parents and, all the accoutrement of middle class and all of this. And, but I am so straight in my heart that I'm just not pretentious. And that is not everybody's cup of tea in my world, because I deal with, some hoity-toities a lot of times. But I have found that being real usually pays off. I've made some of the best friends of my life because I try to just keep it plain. So I'm saying that to say that if you have questions or things, I want you to feel completely comfortable asking me whatever you want to ask. There is, to me, people say there's no such thing as a dumb question. Well, yes, there is. But usually, if it's a sincere question on topic, I don't consider it dumb. I mean, if it really, a lot of times in the Washington Press Corps, people will go to extremes to find a question that would kind of put them on the map or something. I didn't come into the press conferences with prepared questions because I wanted to see what organically came to my mind, what I naturally wanted to know. And that was always, to me, a fair and a good question. But you'll notice when you see the presidential press conferences, and we've all seen plenty of them now, the journalists kind of give these little speeches first, so with all the little background information. Mr. President, 2 years ago, when you were in the Senate, you were saying that so-and-so, 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 so-and-so. And now the Senate Majority Leader is saying so. So they do all this setup, and then they ask this question. You'll even see them kind of looking down because they write their questions out. That, to me, is part of what is wrong with media. But I'm here really to tell you how to play them, how to work them, and not worry about trying to change them. Because what I have had to tell so many people is lower your expectations a bit. Media does not cover what goes on. It covers what happens. And you know the difference. Racism goes on. It covers a shooting. It covers James Byrd being tied to the back of a bumper in Jasper, Texas, and dragged literally to pieces. That, in media's mind, is covering race. It does not cover all the complications of that topic, because that goes on. So just know who you're dealing with. They aren't equipped to, and it really is not their mission. They're supposed to tell you, here's what happened in your world today or yesterday. And the long form journalism that we all long for, that you see in the Atlantic sometimes, or the New Yorker sometimes, or the Nation, those where they really get under the skirts of an issue. That's rare. Most journalists don't have that luxury. And to be honest with you, most aren't intellectually equipped to do it. So I'm just telling you what I know. We're gonna start with trying to understand just what this media beast is, and then we'll talk about how we're going to play it. Go to my screen. Understanding the news media. So just what does this horde of people want? They're screaming over each other. They're raising their hands. Everybody wants the story, to ask the question that produces the quote that gets the headline. But here's what news is, generally speaking. It is not the ordinary and things that we expect to happen. It's the surprising, the unexpected, the unprecedented, such as the insurrection on January 6th. It is the unusual, the abnormal, and the disruptive, such as the insurrection on January 6th. It is the extraordinary and the remarkable, the shocking and sensational, the unconscionable, the horrible, that has a personal, something that may have a personal impact, or at least be entertaining or curious. January 6th fit a lot of these categories, but these are the things that usually qualify as news. And that's one of the reasons that the insurrection is still alive on your newscasts and in your newspapers. Of course, there's another element, and that is there has been no comeuppance, no accountability, and no real justice, and no closure to that horrible episode yet. But if you think about these being the things that an assignment editor will be looking for in making an assignment, then you understand what they're going at. What the news audiences want to see are not necessarily in this order, but impact. What does that mean to me? Why do I care? Immediacy. How soon are they going to start evicting us? Proximity. Is a hurricane coming here, or is it a flash flood warning here, or is it in 3 counties away? The novelty or the extraordinariness. You mean Elon Musk sent those 2 rockets up and they came back and landed perfectly in a straight line on the path? Wow, how can that happen? The emotional appeal, as we're seeing now with the horror in South Florida, where people are trying to maintain hope against hope in this horrible, tragic situation that just breaks your heart. A follow-up. Sometimes we want to know whatever happened to the woman with Jeffrey Epstein who went to prison. What's going on with that? We want to know. Scandal and conflict are the 2 big biggies that the audience loves and the media loves to cover. So the one thing that we try in peaceful, nonviolent movements is not to give scandal, but we damn sure are going to give conflict, because that is what the whole purpose of civil resistance is. It is to disturb the norm. It is to create conflict without bodily harm, hopefully without property damage, but at least without hurting another person. But the conflict is going to be there because it has to be in order to stop business as usual. Here's news, what I call news arithmetic. You have a state treasurer. That state treasurer has control of state funds. That's the way it's supposed to be, right? So it's no story. But then you have a state treasurer who has control of state funds, and you find out that he or she has a gambling addiction. That means a potential story. We certainly better watch what the state treasurer is doing with the taxpayers' money. Now we find out, come on slide, show up for me, that the state treasurer has control of the state funds, a gambling addiction, and now there's $200,000 missing from the state treasury. There's the story there. We don't really know what it is. Maybe somebody dropped the deposit bag somewhere, we don't know, but that's a story at any rate. The late Reuben Frank, who is a longtime president of NBC News, I liked him because he believed what I believe. I'll be honest with you, a certain arrogance as a reporter, as a journalist. I believe I'm the one out here smelling like smoke because I've been pulling in all the, from this 5-alarm fire and everything. I put myself on the line. I came back and I wrote this story. I'm the one that went to the Persian Gulf and faced all those dangers there, had a hard time sleeping at night because Saddam Hussein kept saying, I'm going to give the Americans a Christmas they'll never forget. And there I was at Christmas and don't know how to shoot a pop gun, let alone do anything else. And I'm thinking, and I have 3 young children back at home in the United States, and I'm thinking, what have I done here? So I felt I have the right to tell you what happened. You can't be a citizen journalist. I am telling you what's going on. I'm the pro here. But Reuben Frank had a little bit of that same kind of hubris in saying that news is something people don't know they're interested in until they hear about it. The job of the journalist is to take what's important and make it interesting. Well, that's kind of the way it used to be until everybody started doing all these focus groups. And they brought in people from all walks of life. And what do you want to see? And invariably, we're tired of the violence and we don't want to see violence on the newscast. And we want to see happy news. And if you remember around the late 70s, early 80s, those of you who are around it or old enough to be aware, and that probably is not most of you. I'm an old head now. But around that time, local newscasts started getting really cutesy. You know, everybody would turn to, and how to turn to the weather instead of now time for weather. You'd have to pitch it to the weatherman with something cutesy like, oh, Ned, tell me, how's that tomato garden going? To show friendliness, because that's what people want. And if you look at your local news now, that thing still runs around. That you know, cutesy kind of little exchange thing, and everybody's so nice and wholesome and everything. Oh, honey, don't believe that for a second. All these goody two-shoes that you see on your local newscasts, and they're always showing how they went and showed up and volunteered for something, did this. Oh, I'm telling you, those, wow. But at any rate, that was the going thing. And so newscasts started giving people all of these little touchy-feely stories and downplaying all the major stuff. And I was very old school about it, because once I had a conniption fit with my producer, because we did the weather and then came out of the weather, and the next story was about 3 bodies being found shot execution style in the trunk of a car. And I told him, he said, people don't want to see, you know, all that blood and guts and stuff. I said, I understand that, but let me tell you, when the country, when the society gets to a point that whether it's going to rain tomorrow or not is more important than knowing that 3 fellow human beings were just wiped out for God knows what, and left like trash in a trunk of a car somewhere. That's when we have real trouble. I don't care what they say they want. See, this is where I say the arrogance comes in, but I still believe I was right about that. I'm willing to hear that I wasn't, but I still believe at this point that I was. So the question is, do you give them what they want, or do you give them what they need? And my answer is, you give them what they need the way they want. And that's what we are going to talk about when we go into the messaging part. Here's an example of giving them something they need, but not in the way they want. They blew it in this way. This was 2017. If you remember, when Congress was on break, which seemed like all the time, they would go back to their districts, and a lot of them would hold town hall meetings. And the town hall meetings would sometimes really get rowdy, but they really became a thing in 2016 and 2017. And somebody who would not hold one, a lot of the Republicans did not, because they didn't want to hear what the people had to say to them. One of whom was Richard Shelby of Alabama. So this is from Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where people were really tired of waiting for a town hall meeting with Richard Shelby. So they started showing up picketing everywhere. And they even formed an organization, and this one woman, they just called themselves Concerned Citizens. Not very inventive, but okay, we get the point. And she, you know, here's a local newspaper covering what she had to say about their movement and how they were really tired of begging Shelby and waiting for Shelby to have a town hall meeting. and nothing had been said, and he was ignoring them. So they just, started marching and picketing. And then she says at the end, we will be holding weekly pickets until we have a town hall meeting. This may be the first of many. So that was in February of 2017. In May, one of her colleagues, a fellow movement activist member, wrote a letter to the Tuscaloosa paper expressing her disappointment and concern because the paper was not covering them over and over and over again, and said it's your responsibility to investigate his history of public town halls. Well, they had duly reported several times on not only these pickets, but on Shelby's shameful history. And she said, you have failed. What actually failed was them signaling that we're going to be doing this every day or every week. Where's the surprise there? First is a novelty the first time. You get the issue down, what they're upset about. You see what the movement, how big the movement is. You get a feel for that. You report it in context about what they're upset about and how Shelby still isn't responding. And you do some follow-up. But because the media was not there every time they picketed, she said, you have failed. Well, again, I say they failed by taking away some of the mystique. And I'm wearing the shirt of the Poor People's Campaign from 2019, when Reverend Barbara, who is magnificent and I think brilliant, but I think made a mistake, a strategic mistake, by saying we are going to march in state capitals for 40 days. So the Poor People's March got covered the first day. And I said, you know what? They may be back on the 40th day, just to wrap it up. And sure enough, that's what they did. They covered the beginning and they covered the end, because they'd already told them, we're going to be doing the same thing every day. Well, guess what? It becomes the norm. It's not news anymore. So be careful how much you give away, because remember, this is what they're looking for. Surprising, unexpected, unusual or disruptive, extraordinary or remarkable, shocking or sensational, the things we will be doing, unconscionable and horrible, that have personal impact, and we certainly can do that. And it may even be a little entertaining or curious sometimes. So we're going to talk now about how we are going to make this happen. If we can, I'd like to take some questions first, though, about any of this before we move on, and also give me time to change my slides a little bit. So I'll stop sharing for now. And any questions or comments or suggestions? Ferris Bueller, anyone?
It is interesting how you describe how strategy and tactics are very much connected to media and outreach. And it makes me think about what a great job Extinction Rebellion has done about using creativity and boldness and the kind of drama of direct action conflict to grab those headlines consistently. I mean, for years now, they have been splashing all over media, one after another. And you can actually see when they replicate tactics too many times, even in new locations, they stop catching the headlines. So yeah, can you say more about some of the strategic considerations we might think about?
Well, I think one thing that a lot of movements fail to do generally is to vary the tactics. You know, we don't use, in civil resistance, we don't use diversity of tactics because that term has been co-opted by Antifa to justify violent behavior. So we lost that one, and so we use variety of tactics or tactical variety, or Um, Too many times, and this is why media sees this way. When you hear that there's movement afoot, you're expecting a march or a rally. And we know that there are literally hundreds of ways to create conflict. And there needs to be more variety, more change brought in. So to me, the march and the rally is the announcement. We're here, look how big we are. Here's what we're talking about. That kind of announces you and gives a sense of scale and scope. Okay. Then you move to something else. You do sit-ins, you do smile-ins, you do work slowdowns, you do boycotts, you mix it up some to kind of keep it going and keep media on its toes. They don't know really what to expect. And, it can become still, really, to me, there have been so many marches in the last 2 years that nobody blinks about them anymore. Oh, what are they marching about? It's just like nothing. It really has very little impact on people, except to the degree that, they wonder what it's about, which is they can find out that pretty quickly. And then, is it holding me up in traffic? Is it blocking traffic? Is it causing me any problem or something like that? Other than that, it's just like another day, more people marching. There just has to be some kind of change brought in to keep the whole idea fresh and to keep the media's attention, because it does become de rigueur. Kathy?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question about timing on notifying the media, because I know sometimes when we notify them too far in advance, they find ways to kind of get out of doing it, or waiting for something better or something to come along. Or if we notify them too last minute, then I'm not be able to show up. There's just what do you see as a good timing for notifying them so that it gets their interest peaked, but not,
Yes. A day or 2 days at the most.
Okay.
Is enough time. And if you don't have that, that's even better. I would call and say, I would call you early, but this is just coming. This is just developing organically. You need to get here. I would say it that way to them. You need to get here is really hard. I was on the assignment desk for a few years, and when you hear someone say that, it's pretty hard to resist that. It's kind of like hearing, look at this, and just refusing to look. Any human being hears, look at that. You have to peek, at least. So yeah, but more than a day or two, they don't need more than 2 days for anything.
Okay, good. And that's what I was thinking, but I get people locally that say, no, we got to notify them so far in advance. And I'm thinking, no, you want to make push them back on their heels a little bit and push them off balance. So they got to make a decision and then show up a little bit.
I agree with you completely.
Okay, thank you.
Completely.
Deborah, 2 questions. One to follow up on that. What about courting local media? Is that a front load, do that earlier type of thing to establish those relationships?
That's a good thing to do, but it's tricky. Here's why. One thing a reporter does not want to feel like is that they're being played, okay? And that they're being wooed, and therefore either the person wooing them expects them to, or their colleagues think they look like they're favoring that person. At least the appearance of objectivity is very important to reporters. And it's very highly guarded, which is another reason that I felt that, kind of jealous about guarding my profession from just amateurs, because there was a particular senator who I just, for moral reasons, despise the man. I just thought he was just the opposite of what I believe a public servant should be, and but I had to cover him. No one knew I despised him, including him. He thought I was his friend because I found something that we had in common, and that is that we both loved the Andy Griffith, the Andy of Mayberry. And so we ended up kind of competing about who had seen the most episodes and everything. And I will never forget going to visit my mother in Little Rock. And the phone rang and she said, Deborah, there's some senator on the phone for you, because I had left at 40. I was leaving town, but I had left a message with trying to reach him and traveled. And then sure enough, he called me back, and there was my mother's senator, and there was John Ashcroft was his name from Missouri. And he never knew. He never knew because you really can park your personal feelings and just go straight to the story. You really do learn to do that. It really is not as hard as it may seem like it is, and it certainly is not as rare as many in the public seem to think it is. You know, the biases that we have may be there. We can talk about them among ourselves, and you never see it really show up. You really don't. I mean, I think you're even, you almost overcompensate for it and bend over backwards to be fair. But when you are courting a reporter, it really needs to be businesslike. You need to say, I add a little razzle dazzle. BS doesn't hurt. Like say, I'm calling you because I've seen you on the air, or I know about your work, and I so respect you as one of the journalists who really gets this, or who really digs deeper, or something like that. Okay, a little flattery doesn't hurt. Okay, so I want to know, why are you calling me? Okay, so you tell them, that their work kind of stands out above the rest, and that's why you want to know. So, I thought that, maybe I could take you to coffee and we could talk about this movement, because a lot of people don't seem to get it, and I think you will, and I really want to talk to somebody who gets it. That's the way I would approach it. Still on the business level, that you're on the business, not just, buddy, too cute by half, because then it will feel like they're just being schmoozed. And they won't feel good about that.
Great, thank you. So on the kind of like opposite but related question, there's one in the chat box about what do we do if controlled media is presenting the nonviolent campaign effectively, or if they're distorting the nonviolent campaign deliberately? And what do we do if, say, like the oppressor's government is telling the media what to report? So what if we're experiencing extremely biased media presentation of our movement, which is not just limited to countries that are not the US, as we know?
No, it kind of used to be, but it's not much anymore. That is a real problem. For one thing, I would try not to put them too much on the defensive, because that's just basically a human tactic anyway. If you go in just attacking right away, most human beings are going to become defensive. They're not going to open it. Oh, really? I got it. They're going to feel defensive. So I would suggest that, I really need to talk to you, because I think that something is fundamentally wrong with the way we're being portrayed here. And I know you don't want that. The projection to me, because so much of life is just psychology, So the projection of what you want from them. I know you don't want to be wrong. I know you don't want to do this, So, you're almost coming through, you're serious. You're somber about it. You're not on, oh, gee, I know you didn't mean it all cutie pie. you're very serious, this was, and frank about it. This was wrong. And, I can't imagine that you want to be wrong. So I thought I need to really correct you on something. And then just lay it out with it. But again, projecting what you want from them. You want them to be open to it. You want them not to want to be wrong. So you say, I know you don't want to be wrong about it. And so here I am to clear some things up for you. And that happens so much. Did you know that before I left ICNC, I finished a pamphlet, a manual for the press. And I need to check because it needs to be out by now. I have a copy of it. It needs to be online on ICNC right now, but they're kind of in flux and everything, and things are kind of crazy. But it's a manual called Chronicling Civil Resistance, a journalist's guide to unraveling and understanding civil resistance. And it tries to clarify terminology, certain strategies, tell them, signs to look for when the movement is shifting, and when the movement is having an effect. Look for certain things like signs of defection from the power holders, that kind of thing. And look for the variety of tactics that are being used. And it really, because I'm trying to get journalists past thinking that all protest is a march, and also falling for the whole it turned violent bit. One episode can happen. You can have 200,000 people marching, and in one corner, 5 people have a dust up or something like that. And all of a sudden it turned violent. Okay? That gets me every time, which is one of the things. You'll hear me talk more about this in the messaging. But get ahead of that before you have an action that be coming up. Tell the journalists that you see or you run into, oh, by the way, if anything goes violent or awry here, that's not us. Say that ahead of it. Don't wait until something happens and then have to come back and say, that wasn't us. We didn't have anything. Just say, if anything should happen here, because people can infiltrate us and people can go rogue and all kinds of things can happen that we can't control. But I want you to know that we're trained and we're disciplined. And if anything happens like that, that's not us. I promise you that will have a sobering effect on the journalist who is about to portray the entire thing as having turned violent. It definitely will.
So I'm looking forward to your pamphlet from ICNC, and perhaps our Campaign Nonviolence and Nonviolence City organizers can help amplify that pamphlet in their local areas by sending it to all of their media people. Wouldn't that be a great project for us to take on with all of our hundreds of organizers?
I would love that, and I'll tell you, they can get hard copies or they can download it for free. It's only about 40 pages, I think, or something. And I try to write it in really digestible language. I don't like a lot of jargon and stuff. But we shall see. Give me 1 second so I can switch to my other.
One other comment for. Sure. Just to speak to the issue of when your media apparatus is controlled by a party that wants to portray you negatively, let's say. One thing that many movements have done is to set up an alternative media stream. So being their own media, printing their own pamphlets. Famously, the American colonists actually did this quite dramatically, but they're certainly not the only ones. Gandhi's newspaper, the Young India, was the largest circulation newspaper in the world at the time. The British newspapers were certainly not portraying Gandhi in a positive light.
Right.
So consider also what your movement can do to get your information out in a way that contrasts at least what the other media source, which may not be amenable, depending on your situation, it may not be amenable to portraying you in a positive light.
That's an excellent point. That's an excellent idea. I really like that. That can be, it can take some time. That can be maybe a little pricey or something. You know, I would also consider maybe putting up if you can afford it, a billboard or posters or something somewhere that have a contrast, that have a picture of the anchor person from the line station, whatever, or somebody who's associated with that's recognizable with that station, and a picture of your truth, something that captures the truth, and say, does this look like violence to you, or something like that? I really believe, I'm kind of a bitch, okay? I'll just tell you that truthfully. I don't like to roll over for people. I'm not violent, and I can say this, that I've had 3 husbands, and I've gotten really vicious with them sometimes verbally, but I have never even had an impulse to even kick a wastebasket. So I don't have the violent streak, and I'm really glad about that. But I also believe if I believe in something, I believe in fighting like hell for it. And I'm not going down with a bunch of liars. You do not get to just lie and make up stuff and go on with impunity with me. It may be not the most Gandhian thing to do, maybe to do what I was talking about, exposing them that way, but that's my resistance. That's the way I do. I believe if we're going to play dirty, you started it. I'm not going to start playing dirty, but I will roll in that mud with you for a while, definitely. And I believe that we have to do that. One of the things I think the Democrats are doing is just trying to be too nice. I can be nice. I can be nice if I am taking on another person. If a bear is at me, I'm kicking and screaming and doing everything. You have to change the way you do combat with your enemy. And okay, Reverend Lawson, who you all know is very Christian, means it to his core. Nonviolence is a principle of his, not just a tactic or strategy and all. I've watched that man, he's as calm as he can be, and just as peaceful as he can be, right, Rivera? But I watched him look like he was gonna just explode when he's heard me talking. He knows me now. He said, oh, Deborah, because I don't know. I am not what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not passive. And my family and my longtime friends will tell you that you can do or say almost anything to me or about me, and it might piss me off a little bit, but I'll get over it. I cannot stand injustice toward other people. I cannot take it. I was in 2nd grade. Corporal punishment was still around at that time. And Miss Walker used to whip the kids in front of the classroom, the rest of the class. So the kid not only got hurt, but humiliated. I didn't know what a petition drive was as a 7-year-old, but I started one. On my Big Chief tablet, I wrote, we do not think it is right to paddle kids in front of other kids. signed, handwriting name. I passed it around, a bunch of kids signed it and everything. We turned it in. I got in trouble with the principal for being insubordinate and disrespectful and all that, but it stopped. She stopped doing that. And that wasn't for me. I was doing it for other people. I cannot stand injustice. I don't know what it does to me. It turns me into the Hulk or something. So if I see someone just flat out lying, and I know they know they're lying about something, and especially good people who are trying to do good things, I'm not going to be that sweet. So I'm not asking you to step out of who you are. I'm just saying there are a lot, there may be some other people who have a different idea about how to approach things. And so tap into them too, because we are not all identical. Diversity is a beautiful thing. Okay, I'm going to switch real quickly. So just give me a second. Oh, come back. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay, I'm back. And we're back. Okay. Now we're going to go to this new PowerPoint, creating your message. Oh, so is James Lawson. Now, you have been through all the established channels of redress. You tried to meet with the people who are not doing the right thing, the power holders. You try to reason with them. No luck. You've gone to the pillars of support, their sponsors, their donors and everything, and tried to reason with them and say, your boy isn't doing right, you need to quit supporting him, or we might have to boycott you, and that's not doing right, so you're just going towards civil resistance. Now, you've used the institutional methods of redress. Now you have to have these things: smart organization, smart tactics, a smart message, so that you can have credibility. One of the things that happened to Black Lives Matter originally, and that origination, of course, was with the Michael Brown murder in Ferguson, Missouri. That's where Black Lives Matter was born. Very organic, which is wonderful in a lot of ways, but it did not have true organization. It was too organic. And in order, you can't just rely on spontaneity, as exciting as it is, as passion-filled as it is, as natural and honest as it may be. You can't rely upon that for sustainability. You have got to organize. You've got to have deliberate tactics, and you have to have a smart message. Otherwise, you're a flash in the pan. So a lot of people wonder, well, why can't we just say what we mean? Why do we have to, craft a message and all? Again, your credibility depends on it, because the right message has to have connection with your audience. It has to be clear to them what you're trying to get over to them, not a bunch of gobbledygook or academic lingo and all of that. You have to talk to your audience where your audience is, and it has to have consistency. And everybody can't do that, all three of those things off the top of their heads. So you have to craft and plan a message. Doesn't have to necessarily be word for word, but you have to know what you're going to say, who you're talking to, and say it consistently and clearly. So you start with these steps. First thing is to decide, who is my audience? Now, it may be more than one audience, so then you really need to do a hierarchy and decide who's the most important audience. Am I trying to really, you hear all the time about these various MAGA people who are giving speeches or whatever, and you'll hear some commentators say, oh, they're speaking to an audience of one. In other words, past all the television viewers or the people in the audience in their place, they're trying to impress Trump, okay? So who are you trying to make, no matter who may be in front of you or who may appear to be your audience, who are you most interested in getting what you're trying to say? That's what you determine first. And then secondly, what do you want to tell them? Are you trying to inform them about the size of your movement, or what you think the problem is, or what you think they better do, what your demands are? What do you want that audience that you chose to know? Now, how are you going to tell them? Are you going to show them the problem in some way, or are you just going to describe it to them some way? Are you going to have a march, a sit-in, a faint out? What are you going to do? Something dramatic in order to tell that audience what you want that audience to know? Then when and where are you going to do it? So those are the steps to creating your message. Now here's who some of the audiences can be. Affinity groups and partners and supporters. Maybe you're trying to create coalitions. Maybe that's who you really want to hear this message, at least for now. So you want to talk to the ACLU. You need the ACLU to get in line with you and join with you in coalition or something. Maybe it's the power holders themselves. You're here to tell them, guess what? You got a whole bunch of people here not happy with the way things are going. Maybe that's who you want to talk to. Or maybe you want to talk to the general public, which I say is the news media, because that's how you get to the public generally, is through the news media. How you speak to these audiences is going to be different. Because if you really are talking to affinity groups, you're going to use the language that they understand and civil resistance language. And, you're going to talk about intersectionality, and you're not going to talk about intersectionality in the general public, please. Unless you have time to explain what intersectionality is. Avoid those terms that are not in general use, because then they'll just think of you as some kind of nerd and somebody disconnected with them, or some flower child, or they'll come up with all kinds of excuses not to listen to you. So speak the language of your audience. Okay. What you need to tell them is this: who you are. We are 300,000 citizens of this state who can no longer abide by the environmental racism that is occurring in the southern part of the state. Now that combined who you are with the problem and the grievance. What you want or demand comes next, and it should be specific. You can't say, we want an end to police brutality. Well, that sounds good, that sounds great. And chances are, if you use that terminology, the power holder's gonna say, well, I want an end to police brutality too. You have to be specific. You say, We want this police brutality to end because we want cameras on every shoulder. We want an end to qualified immunity. We want so and so and so and so, and we want this. Okay, you name 3, 4, no more than 5 specific demands. It's a great mistake that, oh gosh, my mind just went blank. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. 2000.
Occupy.
Occupy, see? You knew exactly what I was talking about because everybody understood. That was a big mistake. Occupy had a very broad, 1% versus the 99%. You kind of got a good understanding of what they, but what exactly do you want me to do? It's kind of like, now, I hope this doesn't come off as sexist. It's just been my experience. Women will tell their husbands, we don't communicate enough. Husbands wired from Mars. Well, what does that mean? Break it down. You need to call me when you're going to be late. You ought to call and check on me every now and then, just to ask how my day was. You have to be specific with some people. And when you're issuing a demand, it's only fair to that person that you are specific and not leave some big vague umbrella for them to kind of figure out what the heck you're talking about. Don't say we want an end to police brutality. We want cameras on every shoulder. We want punishment for those who turn those cameras off. We want a supervising sergeant on every shooting scene in me. I mean, that kind of thing. So they're actionable. Because how are you going to measure an end to police brutality, really? Or if you're getting there, you want measurable, actionable demands. And then finally, the commitment, which I used to call the ultimatum. I tried to soften it some. But the commitment ought to be what you're going to do if these demands aren't met. If they're not, we are going to overturn the way this police department operates. We are going to make sure that there's a new police chief soon. Even if it's something that you cannot do, it has to be within the realm of possibility. But if you have doubts about your ability to do it, threaten something or promise something, or you can even sweeten it. If you do this, we will back you all the way in the next election. But show some commitment that shows you're not just here for the moment and you're not going away. But don't tell them we'll be here every day for 40 days. Don't give that away. So, the 4 C's of communication of any kind is that you are clear, that you are concise, that you are complete, and that you are correct. And I got to tell you, that last one about being correct, please know your stuff. If you're going to quote any numbers, if you're going to make any accusation, if you're going to make any promises or anything, please double check, fact check your information, because any little hole, especially in the beginning, you make hurts your credibility, and then getting that back is so hard. If you do make a mistake, please feel comfortable enough to say, you know what? I'm sorry, I made a mistake with that. It shows a bigness of you, and it also has a way of engendering trust. You know, if you think about it, people who never say I'm sorry or ask forgiveness, do you really trust them? I mean, I might think I have a problem trusting a person like that. And I tip someone who does so readily and seemingly earnestly, really wins trust for me. So, being correct, knowing your stuff is so important. I've seen so many people go off half-cocked and then they come up with some outrageous number and it just makes them say, oh, that's whack. And it's really kind of sad to see because they're washed up there. Nobody comes back to them for anything. Okay, this is a sample scenario that's based on a true event. This was, I want to say 2014. I'm losing a little bit of my recollection here, but this was in Texas. There was a chemical plant that blew up. You probably remember some of this. So it's been damaged and nobody knew the scope of the problem. They just told people within a really close, small radius to evacuate, within a few blocks and everything, without knowing, with this chemical and the plumes and the fumes and everything, and the spillage into the soil and the water and everything, just how far reaching the danger was, or what the danger could be, what risk they were facing. And the people wanted information, there's schools nearby, a park nearby, neighborhoods and everything, and they weren't getting any information. And if you follow this story, and if it sounds familiar to you, it was because they found out that the Texas law had been changed so that this company, chemical companies, did not have to disclose what chemicals they were making. And therefore didn't have to explain what the risk really was. Now imagine that. You're wondering, can I breathe outside, even outside my door? Is it coming in through the windows? Is it radioactive? I mean, what's going on here? And the governor wouldn't even stand up for this. So the people hit the streets. They could pressure, despite what the law, the protections of the law, the ridiculous protections of the law, and they prevailed. That is because their message was clear about who they were. We live here. We have children here. We're taxpayers here. We're homeowners here. We're employees here. What they wanted, what the problem was, we don't know whether we can go home again, whether we need to stay away, whether we will ever be able to re-inhabit this, what the danger is, what the demand was. We want to know exactly what this is. We want to know exactly what the dangers are. We want to know exactly when and if it's safe to return and what we need to do after that. We want to know exactly what you're going to do to make this right. And if you don't, we're going to make your lives as miserable as you're attempting to make ours. That's enough of a commitment right there, just to announce that we're not going away. This is not going away. This is not going to get better. So, that overall is my kind of quick tutorial on messaging. And I'm open for any questions again, any ideas you want to add, pushback, I'm game.
Lulu, I see you have a great question in the chat box. You want to come off mute and ask it?
Yeah, of course. So I'm representing Meta Peace Team, and we do a lot of support actions for movements. So we do like teaching nonviolence, violence de-escalation, as well as placing peace teams, so unarmed civilian accompaniment. And I'm just kind of wondering, how would you suggest we bring media attention to this and the viability of nonviolence, such as like our large gatherings? So organizations or places where we place peace teams.
You're talking about get media attention
Yeah,
for that?
yeah.
Okay, then let's think of something. Think visual. Think about optics. Think about what would make a great picture. How about a completely silent march? Or how about people sitting in a park, just sitting, not making a sound? And telling media, you'll want to see this. We've got an extremely unusual dramatic event tonight and tell them why you're doing it. Because we want to highlight the popularity or the community of nonviolence in our city, or whatever it may be. Invite them to come see something like they've never seen before. And what a beautiful picture that would be, you know. And then one person could get up after so many minutes of silence, and maybe start leading a song, and then the whole group sings the song or something. Something just really that dramatizes the piece that you are about. You know, I think that would. Oh, I can just see that on the evening news right now. I mean, I can see a picture in the paper, you know, of all these people just seated there, just quietly, you know.
Just one other thought for you, Lulu, because a lot of the work that the peace teams do is de-escalation, and it's like it's a great day when nothing happens, right? But one of the angles in there is that personal impact and that unsung heroes and the courage that it takes. I mean, you are all ordinary, extraordinary heroes. You get in between the you stand on behalf of the Black Lives Matter protesters and de-escalate the Klan or the Proud Boys, right? That's a great story of conflict. And sometimes I think you need to package those stories up because they're hard for media people to be there at that split second and to understand what they're seeing, right? So compartmentalize, packaging that for media people to see what's happening. Or the other thing is staging actions that are dramatic, like Deborah was saying, that are calling attention to the need for increased funding and support from the city government, from the local NGOs, that you have a solution to a really important civic problem.
And
Thank you so much.
If you could have a photographer sometime, just even capture stills of you all in action.
Yeah.
You know, that can help with your marketing, so to speak. I mean, I hate to use a corporate term, but that's what it is. It's just marketing for good. So yeah, that could really help with that. That we don't, you know, we're not just theoretical here. This is applied, you know, goodness.
Thank you so much.
Sure, good luck to you. That's great.
Bonita, I saw you stick up your electronic hand. Did you have a question you want to ask?
I think I better wait and ask you, Rivera, at another time.
Okay. All right. Yeah, Richard.
Hello, Deborah. It's great to hear your talk. I'm actually, this is kind of related to what Lulu was just talking about, because I'm also coming from a similar perspective in terms of peace teams, or at least it's kind of the hat I'm going to wear for the next couple of minutes here. And one of the challenges that I'm seeing with some of the peace teams, in particular other parts of the United States, say most notably Portland right now, is they're kind of locked in a little bit of a messaging battle, with one would point directly to, say, Antifa, where there's really this idea about that diversity of tactics. And what that's led to is a bit of a sidelining of a team like the Portland Peace Team, because Portland Peace Team, they will not interject, they will not participate as peacekeepers or violence interrupters in an event where they're not explicitly invited to. And they're not getting the invitations anymore because the diversity of tactics idea following the, most notably following the George Floyd murder, has become sort of the, how you say, has become the expectation, as opposed to taking the approach of nonviolent civil resistance. So when we're sort of locked in that kind of a messaging battle with social movements that normally we would be aligned with in some degree, how can we, what is the strategy that we should be employing or thinking about in terms of winning that messaging battle and sort of bringing people back to a bit of a sensibility about this? Because you know, it's gotten to the point where people coming from a nonviolence perspective, a perspective of nonviolent civil resistance, are getting put on the outs in certain places. And my fear is that this might trend in other places in the United States. It starts perhaps in a place like Portland, but what if that kind of idea sort of picks up elsewhere? How can we counter that? What is the strategy that we should be thinking about?
So you're in Portland, right?
I am personally not. I live in Pennsylvania. I work for Hawaii. It's weird.
Okay.
I just interviewed them and other pieces.
There was someone in Portland I was going to put you in touch with do it, because, you know, my main thing is communications. I am not a movement strategist per se, just kind of where I kind of cross over into that. I understand the difficulty though is because your brand has kind of been spoiled, been tainted by bad actors, you know, and so people now it's kind of taken over or tainted your brand, and people aren't sure what they're getting into now.
Yeah, or even the brand is the brand has, to some degree, I think it almost feels like a twofold problem, where the brand has been hijacked, but also so on some level it's been hijacked, like this is what a social movement is now, right? But it also feels as though it's separated in a weird way. So there are kind of two faces to it, right? There's that hijacking of the brand, but also this divestment in the brand where we have, you know, this group that has diversity of tactics, and then this other group that is nonviolence, but then the group in the diversity of tactics kind of views the group in nonviolence as almost agents of the state or agents of the status quo, as opposed to being parts of civil resistance or being a form of resistance. So it has this weird two-faced nature. It's hard to really think about in many ways.
Well, turnabout is fair play. I mean, you know, they don't have to be the only ones who are disparaging you. Why don't you disparage them? And I don't mean, I'm serious. Why don't you tell the truth about them? Again, good people want to play nice all the time. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus, but Jesus went into the temple and raised hell one day, okay? Because he'd had enough. He'd had enough, and wrong was wrong. And sometimes you have to draw a line and say enough. I'm not talking about being violent. I'm talking about getting down. There's a difference. And worried about alienating maybe people who are hijacking and ruining your efforts. Why? Frankly, this is what I say about the Republicans. I'm worried about the base. You know what? I would be saying, I don't want to represent people like that. Please vote me out. Or if this is who's in my town, I need to not only not represent you, I need to move. Why does it always have to be the rotten apples that are ruining everything? Guess what, Antifa? We don't want you. You go do your thing. If that's what you just insist on doing that, I hope you see the light one day. I hope you will at least read the literature that proves, not just now, but for generations, the nonviolent action wins. But if you want to keep bumping your head, getting thrown in jail, getting picked up, getting shot at, getting stuff like that, getting arrested, go ahead on. If that's, I hope you see the light someday, but don't come over here. Don't claim to be what we're about. We're too nice. Draw a line. Be discriminating. Not discriminatory, discriminating. Protect the integrity of what you are doing. My parents, who were just fabulous people, I didn't understand this for a long time. They said, Deborah, not everybody deserves to be your friend. You know, I was just going to try to make friends with everybody. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. Some people don't deserve you. Now, you know, so you're taught, you grew up in a, or you're in a tradition of tenderness and lovingness that doesn't like to hear things like that. I'm a 68-year-old woman trying to tell you what's real out here. Okay? And you cannot allow someone, if they were such good friends and so loving to you, then why are they going to try to ruin your name and ruin your effort and ruin your movement and get you in trouble and take you and turn people away from you? They don't give a damn about what's happening to you. So I'm just saying, don't let them hijack who you are without defying them. You're not going to fight them. You're not going to try to get them busted or anything like that, but you're going to let them know, no, you are not coming in here doing this. You don't want to be a part of what we're about. You want us to be a part of what you're about. No. Cut it loose. Now, you can talk to some activists, trainers, and they may tell you something very different from what I'm telling you. I'm telling you from life what I know. Not from books and anything. I'm telling you what I know about life. And if you have tried to make peace and reason with them, there comes a point where you see that's not going to work. You have to cut it loose. They're not going to do you any good where they are, right? So what are you losing?
One of the things this kind of circles around for us at Pache, Bene, and Campaign Nonviolence is the challenge of the word nonviolence and those who stand up for it and those who get knocked down for it, and the relative conversations around privilege and depression that play into that. And I think one of the things that resonates for me in what you're saying, Deborah, is that sometimes we need to dig deep. And Reverend Lawson speaks about this a lot. There were many times when Reverend Lawson's commitment to principled nonviolence was deeply unpopular in the civil rights movement and onward. And you have to understand where your ground is and stand on it with compassion for those who are coming to a different decision in their life. It doesn't mean that you can organize your movements at the same time. But it is both a personal conversation and a national conversation. And I share your concern, Rich, that if we can't find a way to be really clear about the moral foundation and the effective strategic foundation of this thing called nonviolence, then we're going to go down a slippery slope in which we're going to get into tactics that our oppressors actually are much better at using than we are. And it is complicated in Portland. And I agree. One of the things that has been helpful in Portland is actually finding the right messengers. Speaking of messaging, it's not just what's being said, but who's being saying it to stand up for nonviolence. So who has the moral authority in your community situation to redefine what the morality is, right? And in that case, it had to be some of the Black leadership had to step forward and say, this street brawling downtown is not helping. We need to reassess.
I mean, look at what we all know, no matter where we are in the country. we all have some association with Portland being wild, being out of control. And yet I know personally about people and groups and actions that were not at all about that, but they got infiltrated and surrounded and, riding on the coattails of it. And Antifa will go, it's very opportunistic, as we know, very opportunistic. Somebody else opens the door, they rush in and everything. And they're looking for, I don't know what that's about. I don't know what that's about. I don't know what really is going on in some of their minds. I understand the impulse to be fed up, and I'm tired of being compliant, I'm tired of being obedient, I'm tired of being peaceful and everything, and I want to make you hurt the way I hurt now. I understand that human impulse. But to go and contaminate someone else's movement and then to consider them to be the weak ones or to be the traitors or something like that, to me is beyond the pale. I would not put up with that shit. I'm just telling you straight.
Great.
And I think that you need to have a good talk. Your whole organization has to have a really good talk with itself and come to some decisions about, you be willing to take anybody in that wants to talk about it, that wants to hear about it, that wants to be reasonable. But if it's my way or the highway with them, they can't, call me when you get better. That's what I say. Call me when you get better.
So we're getting close to the end of our time, and I do want to make time for Benita to ask her question.
No, I
Okay.
wasn't asking a question. I just wanted to support, is Deborah, right? I forget her name that quick. Lord, support Deborah in what she was saying and be the deaconess to the preacher. To Richard, what she was saying is pointing out with Jesus' action in the temple, he was, as MLK pointed out, not afraid of the creative tension. And that's exactly what you're approaching. What she's offering you to do. And we want to empower you to go lean into that creative tension that you're able to approach and embrace it, because that's how change comes about. That's how change comes about with nonviolence. So when you go back to the group, just remember that this is what this action is about. And you can't be afraid of it. I would just meditate upon that whole thing of creative tension the whole time when you're with your group.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just want to put a resource into the chat box. Over the 8 years we've been running Campaign Nonviolence, we've put together a tremendous amount of media resources, templates for doing outreach, verbiage about what this movement is about, images and graphics that you can use. You will find it by going to the Action Week page and scrolling down to the bottom. There's a lot of other cool things there too, so do check that out. In terms of those really practical, like you don't have to reinvent the wheel, we've got it there for you type of things. Deborah, any last words that you want to leave us to think about?
I just really enjoyed this a lot, and I really enjoyed the questions. Sometimes I want to just start off with just take nothing but questions all the time, because it gets to, again, the heart of what people are really interested in. And I know some of my stuff may be a little out there, but so am I. I'm out there. I accept a long time ago, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Some people can't stand me. That's cool with me, baby. The one thing about getting older is that, you say when you're younger, I don't care what people think about me, but you kind of do. But you get a certain age, you really don't care. And it's so liberating. Because I just accept that, I can be too much in some ways, I know. So if I said anything that was offensive, and especially my language, which has cleaned up so much compared to the way it used to be, so much. I am a preacher's kid, if you can believe that. And I'm like the proverbial preacher's kid. My sister was a goody two-shoes. I'm like the little devil. But yeah, so I am a believer, but I believe God gets me if nobody else does. And he said, all right, Deborah, I can just feel it from him. But anyway, I love you all for what you're doing. And I hope you realize that if you are an activist and you get up every day or every week or every month or whatever, and you do something on behalf of other people, you realize that's a gift. That's a gift that you have, because not everybody has that sense of caring about the greater good, and they're willing to put their time and money and lives and everything else on the line for it. So God bless you and thank you. It has been my pleasure. I hope that there's something I said that is helpful. You can email me at any time at dmathiscommunications, plural, dmathiscommunications @gmail.com. And I will be happy to chat with you if I can help. I'll be praying for you, Richard. I realize that, it's easier to say these things than to do them, but I think it's important for you to draw a line in the sand. Because they're bullies, if you really think about it. They're bullies. Look at it that way. You got to stand up to a bully. Yeah, well, no, dog. Not today.
And don't be afraid to say we don't need them as part of what we're trying to accomplish.
Right.
If they're drawing you down another way, don't be afraid. And that's what your group is for, is to be very clear when you're going into stuff, is that you don't have to go down another path that people are trying to lead you. You have to be very clear about your own personal goals and what you as a group want to accomplish.
I would like to ask, and people sometimes, okay, show me what you've succeeded at. Show me what one thing you've accomplished. Unless downtown Portland was looking for a cheap way to raise a building, I don't know anything that they did. That was really, they got themselves arrested. They created all kinds of, really. Show me one accomplishment. What is your objective? And show me what one time that you achieved. So, how you made things better, man? You just gotta cut it. I just want you to feel some of my about this. Just roll with it. Get in touch with your inner id. Oh gosh. Well, I love this. I held you all too long, but thank you so much for giving me time to meet you and talk and everything. And I wish you the best. Email me when you need me.
Great. Thank you so much, Deborah, for sharing your life insights.
Sure, Vera. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.